episode number 33 of Abbott and Costello Meet the Podcast. Abbott and Costello Go to Mars. I'm Jerry Shario, and as always, it is my pleasure to introduce to you author, playwright, musician, actor, director. In fact, of all the podcast hosts in this world, he is one of them. Nick Santamaria.
Whoa! Thank you very much. From your description of me and all those jobs I do, you would think there were three of them. But
no, only one.
And the way I've been eating lately, it makes sense that there's three of them. But
I saw the funniest meme. It said, I identify as a male, but according to the back of the mac and cheese box, I'm a family of four.
It's so true. I can't tell you. My religion is gluttony, and I study gluttonomics, and it's so funny because most of the things that I could easily finish say family size. You know what I mean? So it's like, if I were Grindel, if I were like a monster, I would eat one family at a time. It would be fine. Anyway, that is strictly, science fiction. And speaking of science fiction.
Yes.
And we are speaking of science fiction.
Great segue.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We're talking today. This is a podcast number 32. Wow.
33.
See? 33. 33? Really?
Yep.
Oh, goodness. Ooh. I'm off. I wrote 32 on top of the page. See, I don't want this to end. That's the thing. I'm enjoying it so much. And speaking of which, I've been hearing from a lot of people on the YouTube page, and it's always good to hear from everyone. And number one, Lost in Alaska, it's as if we released a plague of locusts. Everybody hates that movie. I'm getting so many comments about it. There were a couple that said, "Oh, I love this movie," but I'll tell you, most of them are like, it should have never been made. It was like, what were they thinking, or more correctly, not thinking when they were making it? But people hate it. But on the other end of the spectrum, they love Go to Mars. Abbott and Costello Go to Mars, which is what we're talking about today on podcast number 33 of Abbott and Costello Meet the Podcast. And Abbott and Costello Go to Mars, it seems to be a sleeper. People love it, and I have to tell you, I'm in that crowd. I love this movie. I just think it's so much fun. And I think a lot of people that watch it with a modern perspective, they look at the special effects are a little cheesy and early on. I personally think the movie looks great. And they've seen millions of space movies, throughout the years. But if you're looking at this in perspective as to when it came out, they were like right on top of things. They were right on top of it. Let's start at the beginning. First of all, there's an interesting story. When Lou had his first bout of rheumatic fever. Remember, he was in bed for almost a year. Well, during that time of convalescence, Charlie Chaplin and his wife, Una, came to visit. And part of the conversation was, number one, Chaplin was thinking about using Lou in a remake of The Kid. I don't know where Abbott would have fit in there. Maybe he would have been the kid, I'm ready for my pablum. But change my diaper. But so the other thing he brought up was he had an idea for Abbott and Costello, and he says the title would be Abbott and Costello on Mars. So actually, the very first thought of this movie was Charlie Chaplin in 1943, 10 years before they actually made the movie. Now, this movie is a direct response to a movie from 1950 called Destination Moon. Now, Destination Moon was the first of these space movies, where a pretend rocket goes up to the moon. So this one was the first, and it was produced by the great George Pal, and also uncredited Walter Lantz from the Woody Woodpecker cartoons and the other animation characters. Yes, he co-produced, and if you remember this movie, I actually saw it in the movies at a revival house, and it starts with a Woody Woodpecker cartoon. And he explains all about, space and jet propulsion and all that stuff. And it's Woody Woodpecker. So so that's the beginning of the film. That's a universal connection, actually, Woody Woodpecker, Walter Lantz. But it was, I don't believe it was a universal film. It was Eagle Lion. And the boys had their experiences with Eagle Lion, in fact.
Yeah.
So a couple of years later, Howard Christie, their new producer who took over for Robert Arthur, got together with an old friend, D.D. Beecham, who came up with Wistful Widow of Wagon Gap and Abbott and Costello and the Foreign Legion. So he was an old hand with the boys. And he and Howard Christie came up with the idea for this film, sending the boys into space. And the ultimate joke was the title, Abbott and Costello Go to Mars. Now, I'm going to solve this right now because this is something nobody knows about. The title actually makes sense because they go to New Orleans first. Instead of Mars, they go to New Orleans during Mardi Gras. And Mars is a well-known abbreviation for Mardi Gras. So it's Abbott and Costello Go to Mars / Mardi Gras. Now, none of this makes sense because I just made it up. So forget that. The title does not make sense.
No.
It's a joke, though. It's a joke. They never make it to Mars. They're Abbott and Costello. Of course they wouldn't make it to Mars. So anyway, they end up going to New Orleans during Mardi Gras and then eventually to Venus, where they meet a lot of really pretty women. The movie was budgeted $100,000 more than Lost in Alaska. And boy, does it look it. Lost in Alaska was made for peanuts. And boy, did it look it. But this one, $762,446. And, a few cents here and there. And it made $1.25 million. So it did pretty well out there.
Nice.
Yeah, but our friends at Universal International were not happy that they spent more money on the film. But fortunately, it looks great. It all shows up in the movie. And you know what shot I love more than any? And I'm going to say it now if people want to look for it. When they land in New Orleans, the camera is on the rocket ship, the bottom of the rocket ship, and the ladder comes down and the guys come down. But it's shot through like the woods, the bayou country. Yes. And it really does play that way. You really think, of course it's Universal, but it really looks like the bayou.
Yep.
It's beautifully shot.
It is.
So anyway, Howard Christie and D.D. Beecham both came up with the script. With the story idea. The script was by D.D. Beecham and our friend John Grant. And I got to tell you, there's not much John Grant going on here.
No.
We'll get to those points, but he's coasting a little bit here, I think. I really think he is. It was directed by our pal Charlie Lamont, who we know gets it in on budget and on time. Again, Charlie Lamont from Two Reelerville. He's a comedy expert, that's for sure. Okay, so why don't we get to the film itself? But first, I want to ask Jerry, how you doing, pal?
I'm doing well, sir. Doing well. Trying to adjust weather-wise over in my corner of the country here. We're hitting our usual August higher temperatures. And my Boston body doesn't like it at all.
Well, let me know what's a typical temperature there now.
Right now, can be anywhere from mid-80s up to possibly 100.
Okay.
And it goes day to day, which is the most difficult thing to adjust to. Because, my gosh, today it's 75. Tomorrow it's 98.
Keeps you on your toes, that's for sure.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, here it's the same pretty much. Today was in the low 80s and, when I took my walk in the morning, and now it's like low 90s. The other day it went up to 101.
Wow.
You just don't know. And summer is my least favorite time of year. During the winter you could put on clothing. During the summer, you can't rip off your skin and your sinew.
Yes.
It just doesn't work that way. So anyway, well, I'm glad to hear you're doing well and you're dealing with your empty nestery.
Yes.
You and your wife have the house to yourself.
I think I'm dealing with it a little better than she is, but yeah.
I thought that's typical. I would say that's
typical. Only child, and as a result, the baby, so there you go.
Oh, there you go. Well,
how are you doing?
Me, I'm doing well. My head is healing. For those of you who missed it, I had 3 different falls the other night. It was July 14th. That evening, and I actually scalped myself. I ripped off 18 inches. That's 1.5 feet across my forehead, and actually ripped my scalp off and saw my skull. So now it's healing, and I'm doing my best. And for those of you who are Facebook friends of mine, I just want you to know that I lost my main Facebook page, which was like 5,000 friends. And that's the one you went to in the mornings and looked at the jokes and the songs and all that stuff. It's gone. Somebody stole it. And there was no way of me getting it back because Facebook doesn't help you at all. So I started a new page. So the problem is they're cloning it already. So you have to be careful about what you're going to, if you get a friend request, please check with me first. Okay, so that's out of the way.
Yep.
That's old business. Any new business? Yes, I'd like to take up the tax. Well, you got to take up the carpet. I'm doing duck soup all of a sudden.
Yeah, I noticed.
I've got it memorized. Anyway, so we have Abbott and Costello Go to Mars, and it begins with a scene that I didn't see until recently. Growing up in New York, we've said this several times, Abbott and Costello was a Sunday perennial. We watched it every Sunday morning at 11:30 till 1 o'clock. That's a 90-minute time frame. And of course, they had to cut for commercials. So this movie begins. I love that theme song, by the way. I guess you got that idea. But when you fade in, you see this. I remember these when I was a kid. At the end of a string was a motorized airplane, and you would swing it overhead, almost like a lasso, and it would fly around and around and around, and you'd hear the motor. I could still hear it from the neighborhood. And that's how this movie begins. You see the plane going round and round, and of course, who's holding the other end of the string but our boy Lou. And Lou plays Orville in this one, and he's the world's oldest orphan. He now works for the Hideaway orphanage because nobody adopted him. Apparently, he was 38 years old in the movie. He's actually older. I think he's like 46. What is this, 1953? Is 47, actually. Yeah. And he's playing 10 years younger or 9 years younger. Anyway, so he's doing the airplane thing, and he's surrounded by kids, other orphans, and these kids are much younger, I would say 7 or 8 years old. And 2 of them are very, very intelligent children. You know that because they're both wearing glasses. But the other kid is our pal, Harry Shearer, the Simpsons voiceover artist and comedian, and I was going to say the Ruddles, not the Ruddles.
Spinal Tap.
Spinal Tap. Funny, talented man. And he's a little boy here talking to Lou Costello. And around this time, he was also making appearances on the Jack Benny show, the TV show. So he started very, very young. But it's a very funny scene because they're questioning Lou about what makes a jet plane go, and rocket ships and stuff like that. And he doesn't know. But the kids all around him, they know every last detail. And what I found interesting, Jerry, was that I went back to watch it again, the beginning.
Yeah.
And I wanted to see if the kids were reading all this information off camera. Okay? Because you can always tell when someone's reading off camera. They're not reading. They memorize this stuff. And I'm telling you, kids, This was some very complicated stuff for them to get out. So I was very impressed by these kids.
Yeah.
So anyway, the plane gets loose. It crashes through a window. Lou yells, "Jiggers, the cops!" And they all start running to the orphanage. They close the door on Lou, and he's got to find a place to hide before the cop gets him. And sure enough, across the street, picking up a top secret box full of whatever top secret stuff is top secret Bud Abbott. Now this kills me. When I wrote the chapter in our book, the annotated Abbott and Costello, available on Amazon and at McFarland Press. Abbott works for this top secret rocket place. I mean, it's almost like NASA, you know?
Yes.
And Bud works for them. Bud works. Let me say it again. Bud works. He's got responsibilities. He has to lift things. So, and here's the part that I love. They say that he worked for them for 5 years. And Bud, when they made this film, was 50 years old. So at the age of 50, he started working for NASA. He's been there for 5 years. Bud! Let me get that box.
There have been other movies where, especially when it starts, they both have a job somewhere, some way, somehow.
Yeah.
But inevitably, Bud has the job in name only.
Yes.
He's there to make sure Lou does the work, kind of thing.
Exactly.
So just right off the bat, watching him carry that humongous box out of the building and put it in the back of the van, it's like, my gosh, he not only has a job, he's doing manual labor.
It's so strange. It really
Yes.
is. It's very odd. Now, I'm forgetting one point that I was making at the very beginning. The whole thing, the whole scene with the kids and the airplane and crashing through the window, the movie would begin with Bud coming out of that thing, delivering the box after Lou is hiding in the van. Lou hides in his van, and that's how they get together. But that's where the movie would begin. So we had no idea when he catches Lou later on drawing a picture of the rocket, right? Mm-hmm. Lou gets out of the van once they get to the top secret place, and he starts sketching with his little pad. He starts sketching a picture of the rocket. And Bud comes up and says, "What are you doing?" Oh, I'm sorry. "What are you doing?" And Lou says, I'm drawing the rocket. I want to show it to the gang." Now, he means the kids at the orphanage. Bud immediately thinks this guy's a spy, and he's tied up with a gang. So that's it. That's the beginning of Bud and Lou's relationship in this movie, which is very unusual. They don't start out knowing each other, but it takes them literally minutes to get their dynamic going. Bud slapping Lou and whatever. But it's interesting because, well, I'll get to that point. Okay. So Lou hides in the van. Bud drives him into the top secret place. He gets out, he catches him, and he thinks he's a spy. So he tells him his name is Orville, and Bud's name is Lester. And he takes him in to see the doctor. Robert Page plays the main guy, the main space guy. And we haven't seen Robert Page since Pardon My Sarong, like almost 10 years earlier. And I have to say that in that movie, he actually has a role. I mean, a real role where he's a part of the group dynamic and all that. He's got a good relationship with Virginia Bruce and, all of that. In this one, they just cut back to him for like a minute at a time, and he doesn't have much to do. Let me put it that way. But we have to remember that Robert Page began as a news reader on the radio, and he ended up pretty much the same way. So at this time, he was already hosting game shows and doing news reports and radio stuff. So he was pretty much, heading towards the end of his film career. There weren't many left, I should say. But anyway, his girl is his secretary, and her name is Martha Heyer. Now, Martha Heyer, that's a name. I mean, that's a movie star. This is before she became, big. And I don't mean pregnant. She now she was born in 1924 in Fort Worth, Texas, to a very wealthy family. Her father was an attorney and then eventually a judge She eventually went to Northwestern University. She majored in drama, ended up in California where she worked at the Pasadena Playhouse. And then somebody from RKO signed her to a contract. And there she just had a lot of uncredited roles in B movies and all that stuff. That was like 1953, 1954. Things started happening. She had a nice supporting role in a movie called So Big, directed by Robert Wise. And that was quite a class production. But then she went right into this, Abbott and Costello Go to Mars. Right after that. Yeah, I was with So Big, and then Abbott and Costello Go to Mars. The next year, the following year, she shows up as William Holden's fiance in Sabrina, Billy Wilder. And then, true to form, Francis in the Navy, Francis the Talking Mule, the very next year. So, it's like 2 steps forward, 3 steps back. She was in the remake of My Man Godfrey in 1957. One of her most fascinating roles was in Once Upon a Horse, a film by Hal Cantor, the great comedy writer Hal Cantor. And it was a showcase for Rowan and Martin. And this was 1958. Before any television happened.
Wow.
And it's a very good movie. I have to tell you, I've seen it a couple of times. And one of the best things about it is they hired all the old B-movie cowboys to be in the movie. So it was kind of cool. So there was that movie. Then she was nominated for an Academy Award, Best Supporting Actress in Some Came Running with Frank Sinatra and Dean Martin and Shirley MacLaine. That was in 1958. She shows up in some interesting movies. Carpetbaggers, Sons of Katie Elder, one of my favorite John Wayne movies. The Chase with Marlon Brando and Robert Redford. And her last film was The Day of the Wolves in 1971. Her last appearance was on McCloud. Remember that? Dennis Weaver and McCloud? Mm-hmm. And that was 1974. At the age of 50, she retired, but she came out of retirement the following year to write Rooster Cogburn, the sequel to True Grit. So how about that? Huh. Not bad. Yeah. She was also in a few other movies, interesting movies. Bikini Beach, the very first beach party movie. She was in The Delicate Delinquent, Jerry Lewis's first movie without Dean Martin. Mm-hmm. She was in one of Bob Hope's very worst films, Paris Holiday, in 1958. She was in one of Danny Kaye's worst movies, Man from the Diners Club, which I believe was Frank Tashlin. And that was 1963. And then eventually, the very last film credited to Buster Keaton, really. Some say it was a funny thing happened on the way to the forum, but I believe it was War Italian Style with Sicilian comedy team Franco and Ciccio. So she was in that with Keaton. So she did a lot of interesting things, but the most interesting of all is that she married producer Hal Wallace in 1966, and he was one of the biggest producers in Hollywood. Mm-hmm. They were married for 20 years. He passed away in 1986. And she was around, actually, she passed away in 2014. Wow. At the age of 89. So yeah, long career, Martha Heyer. A real name, actually. So anyway, she is in love with Robert Page. And Robert Page informs her that the panel of experts that they have, the top secret panel of experts, have voted to go to Mars. And who is going? So Robert Page is going on this mission to Mars. And when you think about it, they're going that day. He's going that day. They decided that they're going to Mars and that he's going that day. As soon as they get the supplies on the ship, he goes to Mars. Okay, so, boy, quick decisions, huh? You're going to Mars. Okay. Bring back some candy bars. Okay, so that's the relationship. Those are I'm holding up my quotation marks, those are the lovers in this film. And to be honest with you, it's just cutting back and forth to them worrying after the rocket takes off. I don't know, I'm worried about them. They're doing stuff that I should be doing, and they're doing it. It's that kind of a thing, and I can't imagine that they really stretch their acting muscles at all. So we've got Lou being dragged into the space office to see Robert Page and to report him as a spy. Now, his name happens to be Orville, Lou's name, but they are waiting for a professor, Professor Orvilla, or Dr. Orvilla. And he's played by Joe Kirk, Lou's brother-in-law, who played Mr. Botchagaloop on their TV show. And he's pretty much doing Botchagaloop as Dr. Orvilla. So it's great. He's got the mustache and everything. I did want to, before I forget, tell you where Bud and Lou were at this point, because it's important. And I forgot to mention it off the top. Bud and Lou were so busy at this point. And think about it. They're shooting this in 1952, and they have done 3 live Colgate shows in 1952 so far. They shot 13 of the second season of their TV show, their film show. They finished up Abbott and Costello Meet Captain Kidd. Then they went on an extensive 2-week tour to push Jack and the Beanstalk. So this is where they're coming from as they are about to make this movie. So I just wanted you to know that they are like the workhorses of all time. Okay, so they're there, and Dr. Orvilla comes in, and there's one of the funniest scenes in the movie is when Orville confronts Dr. Orvilla. Now, the briefcase, Dr. Orvilla is holding his briefcase, and as they're arguing back and forth, I am Dr. Orvilla, he hands him the briefcase to hold so he could slap Lou's face. Okay, so his hands are free to slap Lou in the face. Lou does the same thing, hands him back the briefcase and slaps him in the face. I'm Dr. Orvilla. So Lou is insisting that he's Dr. Orvilla because he's afraid he's going to get arrested or worse, for being a spy. So they're arguing back and forth and slap, slap, slap. It's very funny. It's funny seeing all those slaps and Bud's in the background not doing it.
Yes.
You could just see his hands are like, I just got to get in there and slap that guy. He's slap happy. Okay, so they figure out finally that Dr. Orvilla is who he says he is, and he becomes part of the panel, and Lou becomes Bud's assistant. He has to stay on the plant because he saw the rocket, and it's all top secret. So they're pretty much kidnapping Orville. They're kidnapping Lou's character, and it really doesn't matter because he's an orphan. Yeah. So they're kind of adopting him in a way, and their relationship becomes Abbott and Costello almost immediately. But the difference being, they have to go to work. They have to start putting the supplies on the ship, and Bud is getting all the worst of it. Bud is the one, when Lou grabs the bottom package and Bud's all the way at the top. Bud, or his stuntman, does the most incredible fall. Did you see that fall? Amazing. Oh, yeah. And he gets up, and then he trips on another box, and then Lou drops a box on his head. I mean, Bud is really getting it in this one. They didn't know each other before, but Bud's getting the brunt for some reason. But Matthew Conium in our book does point out that as they got older, for some reason, Bud started taking over a lot of that stuff. He started getting the brunt of the abuse. Very, very strange, very, very strange road to take at this late stage. So anyway, Lou and Bud are loading the rocket ship. And I love that Robert Page comes to visit while they're doing it, if only to do the one joke.
Dr. Wilson, is there anything else I can do? I'm afraid not, Orville. This kind of work requires a high IQ. A what? High IQ. High IQ, too.
That's the joke. And that's where John Grant, collected his paycheck and went back to Palm Springs and lived the life of Riley while Riley wasn't home. All right. So Bud and Lou say goodbye to the doctor. The doctor has to go, get ready and say goodbye to his girl and all that stuff. But before that happens, Lou gets a little playful with the buttons. Now, this set, first of all, it's difficult to see just how intricate this set is. Mm-hmm. It actually revolved 360 degrees. I mean, that's amazing. It really is amazing. So when you saw the thing move, it was actually moving. These guys were actually moving it around. It reminded me of the Fred Astaire number from Royal Wedding when he's dancing on the ceiling and on the walls and everything. Same way. It was the same thing. So Lou starts pressing buttons and doesn't realize what he's doing, and the rocket takes off. And everybody's, I can't believe this is happening. And Dr. Orvila says what may be my favorite line in the movie.
Hey, come on back. You're not going to do this.
They stole the rocket ship. So anyway, this starts a lot of really fun special effects. Again, I talk about you can't compare those special effects with the special effects you see today, or even 10 years later. Things got better, but it's so charming. It reminds me of all those. All right, I'm going to tell you something about me. I'm not a big science fiction guy. Okay, especially later on as they started taking themselves very seriously. My favorite science fiction movies are this. Queen of Outer Space with Zsa Zsa Gabor, Missile to the Moon, Catwomen on the Moon. Those were my favorite. The cheesy 1950s science fiction films are my favorite. And I can't get through, whatever, the Andromeda Strain or, any of those other serious ones. So anyway, that's where I'm coming from. And it's one of the reasons I love this movie so much. It is so much like those 1950s, space jockey movies. So what do we see? We see the rocket take off. Bud and Lou don't realize it. They think it's an earthquake until they get to the window. And they do that thing where they slap their cheeks. First Lou slaps his cheek and then Bud slaps his cheek. It's nice teamwork there. Mm-hmm. But anyway, the rocket starts flying through New York City. And I mean, it goes under the Brooklyn Bridge, and then it goes back under the Brooklyn Bridge. And then Eddie Acuff, the great character actor Eddie Acuff, is coming out of a bar, and he's a little drunk, and he looks up, and he sees the rocket go through the Lincoln Tunnel. And he goes back into the bar and he grabs the bottle and he starts drinking. And the bartender says, "What are you doing?" And he says, "I just saw a rocket go through the Lincoln Tunnel." And the bartender says, "Give me that bottle." And then you hear on the radio, "By the way, a rocket just went through the Lincoln Tunnel." And the bartender starts drinking from the bottle. So it was a very nice punchline to a very old situation. Mm-hmm. The guy seeing something and throwing the bottle away. The beauty part is he comes back at the end. And there's a punchline to the punchline. Yep. So we'll get to that as we get to it. Don't let me forget, Jerry. Okay. Okay. So Bud and Lou are flying all over New York, and Robert Page and the whole group is like, they're freaking out. I can't believe they're doing this. They're doing everything we were supposed to do, and they're idiots. So what happens? The rocket lands in the bayou. It lands in what they think is Mars, but it is actually New Orleans during Mardi Gras. Now, according to the world of Abbott and Costello, everyone in New Orleans during Mardi Gras wears a grotesque mask. And it doesn't matter if they're eating or they're playing darts or they're making a cheese sandwich. They are all in these obnoxious crazy heads, which are kind of cool, actually. Mm-hmm. I love the design of them. And there's actually some real footage of the parade, the New Orleans Mardi Gras parade. And they took the European universal setting, the one from all the monster movies and whenever you needed Europe, and they turned it into New Orleans. So it's kind of fun to see the old universal set. So they land in New Orleans, and there is a shot, I think I mentioned it at the beginning, where they're getting out of the ship and it's shot through the trees and it looks like the bayou, and it's really, really nice. So Bud and Lou put on their space things and they put on their helmets. Now, Jerry, I don't get it about the helmets. Okay, they're supposed to be there to help them, breathe the oxygen that's coming into their helmets. But the helmets have these huge holes in front. So they're actually breathing the atmosphere.
Yes.
I don't get it.
You and me both, my friend. That was something that always baffled me about this.
Me too.
And then, at the end of the movie,
you're thinking
there's another. Yes. Mm-hmm. But My older brain tried to justify it by saying, well, oxygen is being pumped into this helmet, so it's around them.
Yes.
And then they can vent their CO2 directly out the front. But that doesn't make any sense.
Doesn't make sense. No, I totally agree. It's like, how could they do this? And, when they go to the restaurant and they sit down to eat and everything, they have to take off the things. No, they don't, And I rewound it and I tried to look at close-ups of, them wearing it. And it was there like a glass in front of that gaping hole, and I didn't see anything. No. I didn't see anything. I think it was just for the comfort of Bud Abbott and Lou Costello, for real, so they could breathe.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that if they enclose that with glass, every time they breathed, it would fog up,
True.
I really think this was a logistical decision that they were hoping nobody noticed. And I just want to say, when we mentioned the fish, just in case we forget, at the very end, Lou has his helmet by his side and it's filled with water and goldfish. Yes. So it's got to be enclosed. Those fish would be on the ground, actually.
Yep.
So they land in New Orleans.
Yeah, they're in New Orleans.
And as they go, they think they're on Mars and they go to explore. They have their little ray guns and all this stuff. They're Ronald ray guns. And it just so happens that there's 2 escaped convicts who are in the bushes watching them get out of the ship and, leave. And these 2 guys are like the B comedy team in this movie. They're actually Horace McMahon and Jack Crucian. One is kind of a tall, thinner guy. The other one is kind of short and fat. And I put it this way in the book, I believe, that they're kind of like Abbott and Costello out of Damon Runyon.
Yes.
They're very, they talk with that same Damon Runyon sort of cadence and their choices of words and all that.
For the first time since I know you, you are showing a gleaming of intelligence.
I am with you.
That was his key phrase, Jack Crucian. Horace McMahon would say something like, I think we should go to the restaurant now and have something to eat. And then the other one would say, I am with you. And Lou brings that back later. But anyway, so you've got these 2, and they're kind of lovable, actually, even though we learn along the way that they're bank robbers and killers. But they decide that they are going to get onto the spaceship, get the extra suits of clothes, meaning their spacesuits and helmets, because every spaceship has doubles of the spacesuits and helmets, right?
Yeah.
No question. So they were going to dress up like these aliens, knowing that it's Mardi Gras and everyone is dressed up in costumes. And then they get the bright idea of robbing the bank before they leave, because they're going to take the ship to Mars. Okay, let me go back. This is where I picture them pitching this idea to Universal International. You see, there's 2 gangsters, right? And they want to rob the bank and bring the money to Mars, where they're going to be very rich. It's like Mars has the same economic system we do. The Martians have a few bucks in their pocket. It's just really weird. They're hijacking the ship to Mars, but first they have to rob the bank. Okay, makes no sense. All right, but it does lead to a very funny scene. So while the guys are getting ready to go out and rob the bank dressed as Martians, Bud and Lou are getting a taste of Mars, or what they think is Mars. And it's all these crazy people with crazy costumes that do crazy things. One lady has a neck that goes up about 20 feet, and then the head starts spinning around. I mean, these are all things to scare Bud and Lou and to make them think they're on another planet. Mm-hmm. And then they go to a restaurant, and Lou gets to do a variation of his Limburger cheese bit. If you remember from Who Done It, he does that great Limburger cheese bit. This one is a little less, I would say. They don't take full advantage of it. This kills me about this movie. One of the guys is sitting there with his mask on, a full head mask. You can't open his mouth. He can't do anything. And he's sitting down to eat. Mm-hmm. How? They don't show that. But he's the one that orders the Limburger cheese. And of course, when Bud tells Lou to take off his helmet, the first thing he smells is the Limburger cheese, and he puts the helmet back on, and it becomes, a whole thing about the smelly cheese. But anyway, they hear on the radio that the bank was robbed. So let's go to the bank robbing scene, because it's one of my favorites, and it's stolen by a very, very funny guy. So the two crooks, actual crooks, are dressed like the Martians now. They go into the bank with the ray guns, and they point the ray gun at the guy who's supposed to give them the money. And he says, no, I'm not going to give you the money. So they shoot him, and he freezes. What it does is it temporarily freezes people. So they take the money, and other people are coming up. They freeze the guard. They freeze Sid Saylor. He was in Captain Kidd. I told you he has the best Adam's apple in the business. It's huge, and it goes up and down. But anyway, he plays the guy at the water fountain, and they freeze him just as the water is going into his mouth. So he has to stand there while the water is shooting into his mouth the entire time. And he gets extra points for that, man, because he was great. So he's got the water shooting at him. Then all of a sudden, one of my favorite comedians of all time, Dudley Dickerson. Now, Dudley Dickerson was the African-American guy in probably my favorite stooge short of all time, A Plumbing We Will Go, where the boys wreak havoc on the rich house, fixing the plumbing. And poor Dudley Dickerson is the cook in the kitchen as the water is flying out of the stove and water is coming out of the lighting fixtures and, whatever. And his reactions are funnier than anything the Stooges do in the movie. And he gets to do some of that stuff here because he plays, the janitor, of course, and he sticks his head out the door just as they're shooting the ray gun at people, and he gets frozen. And of course, he's frozen with this horribly scared look on his face with the wide eyes and the whole bit. But what happens is when the ray gun wears off on Sid Saylor, as the water is shooting into his mouth, he moves away and the water hits Dudley Dickerson in the face. So he wakes up too. But the thing is, he's so funny when he wakes up, his explanation to the cops. And then if you watch closely, there's water all over the floor. We don't see it, but we know it's there. And as Dudley is walking out of the scene, he actually trips on the water. And you see it for a split second. But it's a perfect punchline to his scene. And he practically steals the movie there. Funny, funny man. So anyway, the cops are looking for two guys dressed as Martians. And of course, now they're suspecting Bud and Lou. And again, something very weird happens. They're trying to hide from the cops. And they hide underneath a Chinese dragon. You know those Chinese dragons you'd see in the parades? They're really long, and it takes like 6 people. Why would there be a Chinese dragon at the Mardi Gras parade? It doesn't make sense. But then again, this movie is called Abbott and Costello Go to Mars. And by the way, before Bud and Lou walk away from the ship and the convicts are hiding from them, they're wearing their striped convict outfits, and Lou sees Jack Crucian's butt. He's trying to hide, and he sees the stripes on the butt and tells Bud that he saw a zebra. So they think that zebras are on Mars as well. So Bud and Lou go back to the ship, and it just so happens that the recently wealthy pair of bank robbers are also on the ship waiting for them, and they have a gun. So Bud and Lou are going to be hijacked at gunpoint to take these guys to Mars so they could spend their money. Doesn't make sense at all. So anyway, they take off, and some of the funniest things happen here. The rocket takes off again, but this time it's leaving the Earth. It's going off into space, and we have some issues with gravity here. Now, first of all, there's the gravity boots that, when you let go of it, it sticks to the ceiling. But then you've got gravity slowing everything down. So during this scene, it's a big dialogue scene. And it's, I have to say, it is really, really funny. This is a very funny scene. But it leads to another one of those disturbing scenes with a gun. First of all, they've got the gun, and when they lose the gravity, the gun falls to the floor like a magnet, and Lou picks it up. So now Lou has the gun, and he's pointing it at the two crooks. So he tells them, you guys stay there or I'll shoot you, right? And Bud is like, go ahead and shoot him. And he pushes Lou, and the gun goes off. But the thing is, the bullet is also made of metal and just absolutely falls to the floor, just like the gun did earlier on. So he can't shoot the pistol. It's no good. So what happens? This is where we see that the two crooks are not as lovable as we think they are, as Jack Crucian takes out a knife and is about to run it into Lou, when Lou, quite weirdly, shoots it out of his hand, like in one of those Westerns when they shoot the gun out of the hand, but it's usually an expert shot that does that. How does Lou know how to shoot that little knife out of his hand? It's impressive, but but it's a little weird. It's a little too convenient, I think.
I always chalk that one up to the dumb luck. The luck of the innocent, as it were.
And I always wonder about that because, in the Westerns, they shoot the gun out of their hands, or even on Superman, that kind of stuff happens. Is there a wound to the hand? Did the bullet hit the hand? Did it just hit the gun?
Yep.
I guess so. Boy, talk about great shots. So Lou is one of those great shots. Okay, they're flying around, they're in space, and they land on another planet. And this one happens to be Venus. So they're still not at Mars. They still did not go to Mars. No. So they land on Venus, and I have to say this might have been, outside of radio, where they did make fun of the smog in Los Angeles, this may be the first movie reference to the smog in Los Angeles. They land, and Bud says, "Where are we?" And Lou says,
Venus, I can't see a foot in front of me. I'd say we're in Los Angeles.
There's a smog joke right there. They land, and they vote on who is going to explore where they are, and of course, it's Lou. So Lou puts on his space suit and his helmet, and he goes out on Venus to look around. And during his time, he realizes that he can breathe, for one thing. And number two, there are giant dogs. He's chased by a giant dog. A really lovable looking dog, too.
Yes.
It looked like the one in 30-Foot Bride of Candy Rock. The dog is named Corporal. And at the end, he grows to gigantic proportions. So this is like the rehearsal for that. Because it's a giant dog looking for a giant tree, I guess. Yeah. So anyway, they're doing that, and Lou is walking around, and he comes upon a cave, and he goes into the cave, and it seems like everybody's practicing weaponry. Some of the women are practicing spear throwing. Some are throwing these discs, that kind of like James Bond kind of things, like Odd Job. And every time Lou lifts his head, he's, threatened to be killed by one of these things. So he's constantly running away. And he finally comes upon this. First of all, I imagine most of the money went to this set. It's gorgeous. It's this queen's like underground palace, but it's like a cave as well. And there's a beautiful pool, huge pool, her throne, these crystals that look almost like the 1980s Superman movie where he comes from. And, it's beautiful. It's just a beautiful set. So Lou wanders in, and he meets Queen Allura, played by the beautiful Marie Blanchard. Now, Marie Blanchard, let's talk about her. She was born in 1923. She's a year older than, what's her name? Mrs. Hal Wallace. And she was born Mary E. Blanchard. I don't know what the E stands for. Probably E! Realizing she was not going to Mars, she yelled, E! She was born in Long Beach, California, and she survived polio By the age of 9, she survived it. When she was in her teens, she ran away with the circus and did that for a while. But then she got called back home. She ended up going to 3 different colleges, USC, UCLA, and Santa Barbara State College. In the late 40s, she became one of the most popular bathing suit models in the country. And people took notice. She started getting small roles at RKO, MGM, and Paramount, and then eventually Universal Studios signed her in 1952 to a contract. Her first movie at Universal. Now, I made a mistake in our last episode. I said that it was for Lost in Alaska, that Tom Ewell was in a movie called Back to the Front. Willie and Joe, the 2 characters. Mm-hmm. I said they were written by Ernie Pyle, who was that great journalist during World War II, but It wasn't. It was Bill Malden who wrote the Willie and Joe cartoons, I should say. They were like cartoons. And so she did the first one with Tom Ewell and Harvey Lembeck, the great Eric Von Zipper of the Beach Party movies. Really, to me, an underrated comedian for sure.
Yep.
And that was called Back at the Front. And I will tell you that Bill Malden did not like these movies. There were a couple of them made. He did not like them. In fact, he did not accept the money as a technical advisor on the films. He just didn't want anything to do with them. But anyway, so that was her first. And she did this movie, Abbott and Costello Go to Mars. And she did a lot of sword and sandal movies for Universal, Westerns. She was in the remake of Destry Rides Again. It was just called Destry with Audie Murphy. She played the Marlene Dietrich part. Did lots of TV. In fact, her last TV thing was McClintock. No, that was her last film with John Wayne, McClintock in 1963. And then she did a lot of television until 1968 on It Takes a Thief. Do you remember that? Robert Wagner. And they even got Fred Astaire. And I think it was the 2nd season or the 3rd season. He became a regular. And the poor woman, she was diagnosed with cancer back in 1963 and lasted till 1970. So she passed away when she was 47 years old. That gorgeous, gorgeous woman. Oh, well. So she plays Queen Allura, and she meets up with Lou, and she hasn't seen a man in 400 years. So it's all women, and it just so happens that they're all Miss Universe pageant people, and they're all gorgeous. One is more gorgeous than the next. And the costumes, I could see why the Breen office was a little, antsy about it. Because let's face it. Okay, you know what? I'm a normal guy, and I'm watching the movie last night, and every time one of those women turned around, you saw their little butt cheeks at the bottom of their costumes, and I'm like, oh boy, they must have missed that. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm a guy. What can I do? So she gets to know Lou. Everybody, all the girls are like, very fascinated by him. They've never seen a real man, blah, blah, blah. So they vote to make him the king to her queen. And he has to go and change into the king outfit. So in the meantime, Bud and the 2 crooks are being picked up by guards. Now, this is important because this movie, since I was a kid, they talked about the Miss Universe people, the girls, and Anita Ekberg. Now, for those of you who don't know who Anita Ekberg was, she was one of the most beautiful women ever to step before a camera. She made the rest of the girls in this movie look like boys. She was really, really something. And I was never able to find her. She gets billing in the film during the opening titles. Every time you read about the movie, her name is prominent. But I was never able to find her until recently. When I was working on the book, I went back and I must have watched it 3 times to try and find her. And it turns out that she is in the movie. She does not have a line. And she is one of the guards who take the 2 crooks away. When Lou says, no, leave Bud here, leave Lester here and take those 2 to the dungeon. And she's one of the girls that takes them to the dungeon. And that's it. That's what she does. That's Anita Ekberg. So, just to be complete. Anita Ekberg, born Kirsten Anita Marianne Ekberg. She was born in 1931 in Malmö, Sweden. She was Miss Sweden in 1950. She got into the Miss Universe pageant and lost in 1951, but it did get her a contract at Universal. And she made a bunch of unbilled appearances, some billed, like this one. They put her through the Universal Talent Program. That's where they teach you everything from how to walk, how to ride a horse, how to comport yourself, how to speak, all of those things. But she didn't take it very seriously. She was having affairs with Sinatra, Tyrone Power, Yul Brynner, Rod Taylor, and Errol Flynn. And that was just the first week. So anyway, she did not take any of this seriously, and Universal dropped her after 6 months. So
wow.
So she was a free agent. She started getting a lot of press, especially in Confidential, which was the rag during that time. It was the National Enquirer of the time. She ended up pairing up with Bob Hope on his tour of Greenland for the troops, and John Wayne talked to Bob Hope about her and ended up signing her to a contract to his production company, Batjack Productions, for $75 a week. She had her first speaking role in the John Wayne movie Blood Alley in 1955, starring John Wayne and Lauren Bacall. But she ended up making a bunch of interesting movies after that. She appears in Artists and Models with Martin and Lewis. That's a Frank Tashlin movie. Tashlin loved protuberant women. Let's put it that way. She shows up in War and Peace in 1956. A great movie called Back from Eternity. It's a remake of Five Came Back. I think I talked about this movie a while ago. And she's in that, and she's just wonderful. And that's 1956. Then she does a movie with Victor Mature called Zarak, Z-A-R-A-K. That's 1956. And I only say this because she does a dance in this movie, with the 7 veils and all that stuff. It used to paralyze me when I was a child. I would watch it and just, and that was one of my more articulate days. She shows up in the very last Martin and Lewis movie, which happens to be my favorite, Hollywood or Bust, and a typical Frank Tashlin pun there. She shows up again in one of Bob Hope's worst movies. Martha Heyer is also in it, Paris Holiday in 1958. Then in 1960, this is the movie that made her an icon. This is what made her indelible. And that was La Dolce Vita in 1960, the Federico Fellini film, where she bathes in the Trevi Fountain. And it became history, film history. The movie, I remember growing up with her, there's 2 of them that I grew up with. One was Boccaccio 70, which was a compilation film, 3 different stories featuring 3 gorgeous women. One was Romy Schneider, was the first story. The second story was Anita Ekberg. She plays this gorgeous woman who comes to life. She's on a billboard, and she comes to life, and she's this giant, annoying this censor who wanted to take down the billboard. It's great. It's just terrific. And of course, the last story belongs to Sophia Loren, the most beautiful woman who ever breathed. The other movie that I love is 4 for Texas, with Frank Sinatra and Dean Martin. And they have 2 beautiful women as their co-stars, and one is Anita Ekberg, who is appearing with Frank Sinatra, at this time in public. And Dean Martin has the great Ursula Andress as his partner. And our friends, the Three Stooges, show up in that film as well, because actually Frank and Dean loved slapstick. They loved the Three Stooges. They loved Laurel and Hardy. They loved the Ritz brothers. So yeah, they got that going. And sad ending. She not only made Way Out with Jerry Lewis in 1966, but The Alphabet Murders, another Frank Tashlin film. But she died broke in a wheelchair in a home, a rest home. And she had a Great Dane that actually jumped on her and knocked her over, and it broke her hip and all that stuff. So it just wasn't a very good ending for this beautiful, beautiful woman. So that's Anita Ekberg. That's a lot of talk on a woman who has no lines and it's just carrying a spear, you know. So the only two we haven't talked about are the two crooks that she had to take down to the dungeon. And I mentioned one was Horace McMahon. And Horace McMahon was born in South Norwalk, Connecticut in 1907. He studied law at Fordham University. He wandered into acting during that time. And his most acclaimed role on Broadway, once he made it to Broadway, was Detective Story. And when William Wyler wanted to make the movie version of it in 1951, he hired Kirk Douglas as the lead, William Bendix, Eleanor Parker, and Howard McMahon, not Horace, I'm sorry, Howard McMahon got to play his role from Broadway. And he's terrific in the movie. He's just terrific. He played a lot of gangsters, a lot of, not the head gangster, but I want to say the assistant gangster. His strong arm men, the guys who are underneath the gangster in a nice way. I mean,
the junior executive gangster. Yeah,
there you go. The gangster in training. So William Wyler used him, and that was great. And he did The Delicate Delinquent also with Jerry Lewis, and one of my favorite Bob Hope movies, and one of the most unusual, Bo James, which was about Jimmy Walker, the mayor of New York. And he did 5 seasons on the TV show Naked City. So he was a regular on that for 5 years. He passed away in 1971 at the young age of 64. Okay, and the other one, the short, fat guy, Jack Crucian. He was born in 1922 in Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada. And when he was young, the family moved to Hollywood. And he ended up acting in an operetta at Hollywood High School when he was just a kid. And somebody from CBS saw that production and hired him. At 16 years old, he started at CBS doing radio shows. And he worked on radio for those years up until the war years, where he was drafted. But they put him into the Armed Forces Radio Service, which would not only take radio shows that were being broadcast to the public and turning it into productions for the armed service people overseas. That means taking out all the commercials and stuff. But he became quite prominent in that branch of the service. They utilized his skills. I used to do commercials for the armed service, radio and television. I did one television thing where I played Bogart with the trench coat and the hat and the whole thing. It was fun. But anyway, so Jack did that. And then in 1949, movies started knocking. And he started doing small roles, mostly, uncredited. And he shows up in Coming Round the Mountain in 1951 with the boys. And he did War of the Worlds just before Abbott and Costello Go to Mars. And in War of the Worlds, he plays a guy who's he's shot by the Martians, and he's what's the word I'm looking for? He's disintegrated in front of everyone. That movie, man, they even disintegrate the priest in that movie.
Yes.
Yeah, my goodness. So let's look at his list of stuff. Jack Crucian, what a career. He was in The Long, Long Trailer with Desi and Lucy. He was in Money from Home, one of Martin and Lewis's worst movies, done in 3D, by the way, so you can see just how bad it is very clearly. He did The Great Diamond Robbery with Red Skelton in 1954. He did Cecil B. DeMille's last film, and he only produced it. It was actually directed by Anthony Quinn, The Buccaneer in 1958. Then he was nominated for Best Supporting Actor in The Apartment in 1960, where he played the doctor. He shows up in The Bellboy with Jerry Lewis, The Ladies' Man with Jerry Lewis, and then along those same lines, The $1 Million Duck. He shows up in a movie called Satan's Cheerleaders in 1977. And his last film was actually in 1997. It was called Till There Was You. On television, he wins my heart because he not only did a Superman episode, but he did a Batman episode. So he's got the double gold star there. And he was a semi-regular on the show Webster He did 18 episodes from 1984 to 1989. You remember Webster was that pint-sized little guy. And then his last roles, I think he did like 4 episodes of Empty Nest in 1994. And he passed away in 2002 at the age of 80. So yeah, that's Jack Crucian, quite a career. So, okay, where were we as far as the movie is concerned? They're on Venus?
Yes, the gangsters just got carted off to the dungeon.
Yeah, and it's hard to get carted when you're not at a bar.
Exactly.
So, okay, they're at Venus, and let me tell you, folks, it is just wall-to-wall gorgeous women. That's all there is. And the queen herself, Marie Blanchard, is just beautiful. The cheekbones, like really award-winning cheekbones. So, this is where John Grant comes into play. Now, if you remember, in Pardon My Sarong, there was the Tree of Truth, meaning that if Lou told a lie under the tree, a coconut would fall on his head and prove that he's lying. Well, in this version, it's the Venusian balloons, which is like, it sounds like a team, you know? The Venusian balloons are ahead by 3 points. So against the Mars morons. So anyway, she gives him a stick, and on this stick are 3 balloons. And she says that if you even think of another woman, one of the balloons will pop. And if one of these balloons pops, I am going to set you off into space where you will float forever. Right? So really a scary thought, by the way. But anyway, so she leaves him alone with the balloons, and Bud is there as well. So Lou immediately looks at one of the beautiful girls, and one balloon pops, right? So Bud says, no, let me hold it. It'll be safer in my hands. He looks at the same girl, and the second balloon pops. So finally he gets the idea, here, put this glove on. If you put the glove, it'll break the... So he puts the glove on, and of course he puts it in the wrong hand, and the third balloon pops. So Queen Allura comes back, and she flips out because, you know, all the balloons are gone. So they do another version of the same routine, which I find kind of unusual and a little excessive. It's the chair of truth, where if he tells a lie, he gets shocked, you know, like lightning. And at one point, she says, what can a king do that a queen can't do? And Lou says, be the father of a large family? But anyway, so the crooks deal with the guards and make a deal with them, saying, if you let us go free, you know, we'll take you back with us to the earth and you can see what we live like and blah, blah, blah. So they agree to do that, and they show up to say that we are taking over, but it turns out that they don't. And this is why. And I think this is very funny. The queen, who her last experience with a man was 400 years ago. And of course, these girls never knew what a man looked like. So she says she's looking at Bud and Lou and the 2 crooks as 4 examples of manhood. Then she goes to her telescreen and shows what men really look like. And they're all muscle men. They're all, you know, they all have perfect bodies and muscles and pecs and all, you know, they're all buff. And of course the women are all like, ooh, and the men are looked at as like, you know, less than, that's for sure. So they are banished from the planet. They have to leave the planet because they don't have pecs. So they should have brought Gregory with them. They would have gotten a free ride. But so anyway, they have to go back into the spaceship and go away. And, you know, it's very sweet because the queen really did like Lou. And it's really sweet when they have to say goodbye and everything. She's very disappointed that it didn't work out. And Lou goes back before, you know, getting back onto the ship. He goes back to her, and he's got the 3 balloons. And he hands them to her, and he gives her a big kiss, and all 3 balloons pop at the same time. And she's like, get out of here, get out of here. She's embarrassed. But once he leaves, she looks wistful. She looks disappointed that it didn't work out. And that's a very nice touch, I thought. It's very sweet. Anyway, they all get back on the ship, and somehow they press the right buttons to get back to Earth. I think it was the Venusians, actually worked it out for them and got them to go back to Earth. And I love that they land at LaGuardia Airport. I never noticed that before. The rocket ship lands at LaGuardia Airport. So,
Yes.
okay, so this is wonderful now. This is one of my favorite endings of any Abbott and Costello movie. And remind me to tell you about the castle film, by the way.
Okay.
So they're in a big parade. They're the homecoming heroes. They're in the back of an open car. It's a big ticker tape parade, mostly stock footage. You see Robert Page and Martha Heyer reminding us that they were in the movie. And then you see the two crooks in the back of a paddy wagon, and they're happily waving to everybody. So it's kind of a happy ending for them too, in a way, even though they're going back to jail. And Bud and Lou are in the back of the car waving to everyone. Lou's got his helmet filled with goldfish. And a woman runs up to Lou, grabs him, and kisses him. Now, in the meantime, the Queen up in Venus is watching the whole thing on her telescreen. And she sees the woman kissing Lou, and she becomes jealous, and she tells one of her minions to do something about it. So what happens is Lou is kissing the woman, she goes away, and we see a flying saucer overhead over the skyscrapers of Manhattan, and from the flying saucer comes a pie, and it comes sailing through and it hits Lou on the top of the head. Right? And what does he say? He says,
She found me again.
And then it fades out to the end. So she's got her eye on him, probably for the rest of his life. So that's the end of this really, really fun Abbott and Costello movie. And yes, Jerry.
Two things you asked me to remind you of, and one of them was the drunk punchline.
Oh, Eddie Acuff. Yeah. Okay, real quick. Now, you remember at the beginning, I told you that he's the drunk that comes out of the bar. He sees the rocket go through Lincoln Tunnel. He goes back into the bar, starts drinking. The bartender grabs the bottle and says, "What are you doing?" The radio guy says, "Oh, a rocket just went through the Lincoln Tunnel." The bartender takes the drink and he starts drinking. Okay, so we're at the end of the movie. The rocket, I left out the most famous gag in the movie. The rocket is coming back to New York. Why New York? It comes back to New York, and it's about to hit the Statue of Liberty. And the Statue of Liberty ducks. So they dress this woman up as the Statue of Liberty, and she looks pretty damn good, I have to tell you. And she actually ducks, and the rocket misses her, and she goes back up. And it's a really sweet gag. Really, really sweet. But anyway, Eddie Acuff, the drunk from the earlier scene, is shown coming out of rehab. And he's all sober, and he looks great, and he looks fantastic. And then he sees the rocket go through the Lincoln Tunnel again, and he heads back into the bar. And you see the door close, and that's it. That's the punchline on top of the punchline. But anyway, you wanted to mention the Castle films, right?
Yes.
Okay. This movie, this is the first time I'd ever seen a Castle film. I would go to like the department stores with my parents. I may have been 6 or 7. And I remember wandering over to the camera section, because my dad used to like to go to the camera section. And there in a locked glass case were these films. And the one that got my eye was called Rocket and Roll. And there was a picture of Bud and Lou on the back of a rocket flying through the air. And Lou looks like Lou, and Bud looks like he's on crack. He's got this expression on his face like, wow, we're in outer space. And I wanted that movie so bad, and it was so expensive, and I couldn't get it. And anyway, that's my first memory of Abbott and Costello Go to Mars, Rocket and Roll. And so many people have told me since then that they had that in their collection, their Castle Films collection. I don't think I ever got it. I don't think I ever owned it. But that box, boy, did it make an impression on me. So that is it. That is Abbott and Costello Go to Mars. And I have to tell you, people like it a lot more than, they'll admit, I have to say. The New York Times, the snobby New York Times, on their television book, their Sunday television book, they would write snarky remarks, if they didn't like a movie. And this one was Abbott and Costello Go to Mars. And they wrote, it's about time. that was the snotty. They must have worked for Universal. Snobs. But anyway, yeah, I heard that. And I heard Leonard Maltin call it like their worst film and all this stuff. You know what? Look at it again. Even Matthew Coniam writes in our book that, thank you, Nick, for making me watch it again, because really it's not bad at all. It's actually a lot of fun and one of their better later films. I'll put it that way. What do you think, Jerry? Let's give it your assessment here.
Well, yeah, I'm not as enthusiastic about it as you are. I like it. I think it is a fun time. Honestly, that first flight through New York City, I would have trimmed it a little bit. There's a couple of extra shots of the rocket just kind of going around buildings,
Yeah.
Made that a little tighter. But otherwise, it is very enjoyable. I will also give credit to John Grant. I'm trying to remember where it came up, but I think it's when they first landed in New Orleans and they hear a noise and Bud tries to send Lou to go get it.
Oh,
he says, what are you going to send me over? He says, well, if I go, I'll leave you here alone, right? You don't want me to do that, do you? Oh, yeah, you're right. Okay. And he goes.
Sort of a variation on the,
yes.
I'll stay here and you go there. No, wait a minute. Why do I have to go? Okay, then you go there and I'll stay here. All right, that's better. It's sort of a variation on that.
Yep.
That's John Grant. That's John Grant, blatant John Grant.
Stealing from himself, basically. Yes.
Exactly. But, there really is not a lot of that. There's not a lot of wordplay. It's mostly, and you find this now as they're getting older, it's the situations. It's the situations more than the back and forth wordplay. This is the way they developed, And, a lot of people don't like the movies in the 50s, but to me, they're a whole different breed, and they're to be appreciated on a whole different level as far as I'm concerned. And this one, I'm sorry, for me, Jerry, I just think it's a lot more fun than people have led others to believe. It's really not bad at all.
I agree.
And I happen to love the idea that they never go to Mars. And it's in the title.
Yeah.
Now, I will mention one thing I do mention in our book, the movie Stan and Ollie that came out 2018, I think it was. Yeah. And it is the story of Laurel and Hardy's final tour in England. And I always had trouble with the movie. I mean, it's a loving movie, and it's not a bad movie. It's just nothing in it is true. And that bothers me a lot. So as I was watching it, there's a scene in the movie where Stan is trying to get a feature film off the ground, and Laurel and Hardy are at a stage where they're considered old hat, and they could not raise the money to make this film. So Stan is very dejectedly walking away from that meeting, and he turns around and he sees this huge poster on the side of a building, and it's for Abbott and Costello Go to Mars. And it's big and it's flashy and it's what's happening now. And Stan had to look at it and just shake his head. And that was his realization that maybe they were old hat at this point, But as I was watching the film, and this is where people are going to hate me, but as I was watching the film and they showed the poster, I kind of wished I was watching Abbott and Costello Go to Mars. I'm sorry, but I can't stand what they did to their story. None of it's true. Okay, so that's the end of this one. And we are heading towards, 34 is next?
Yep.
Oh, my goodness.
34.
Next, Abbott and Costello meet Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. And I'm not going to say anything about this before our next recording session, because I do have some strong opinions about this one. But I know it's a favorite of some people that I know, and I don't want to offend them, and I won't mention names. but we'll get to that when we get to it. In the meantime, Jerry, as usual, this has been the highlight of my month or 2 weeks, and always a pleasure. Always a pleasure.
It's the highlight of my fortnight. It really is. Thank you.
And your 4 legs. Wait
That
a minute.
too.
I only have 2 legs. All right. So great. I will see you next time when we confront another monster, actually 2 of them in one person. And if you count the stuntman, 3 people. Okay, so everyone have a wonderful couple of weeks. And again, if you get a Facebook invitation from me, do the homework before you accept it, okay? Get in touch with me or just click on it to make sure it's really me, okay? Thanks, everyone. Have a wonderful time, and watch Abbott and Costello Go to Mars. I think you're going to like it. All right, take care.